I still remember my first day of school, not because it was magical, because it felt like I was being processed into a facility. Everything was gray. The floors, the walls, the teachers, even the air felt institutional. Mrs. Grant, my homeroom teacher, looked like she'd been teaching since the war. No smile, no hello, just find your name, sit down, don't talk. She pointed to a desk that wobbled, had someone's name scratched into it with a compass and smelled like sour glue. Kids today sit on yoga balls and talk about their zones. We had one zone, sit down and shut up. There were no affirmations, no safe spaces, just a flickering fluorescent bulb, a dusty globe, and the sharp awareness that this was now your life for the next 12 years. And that was before the rules even kicked in. You never really understood the rules. They weren't posted on a wall or explained calmly on day one. They were absorbed by watching other kids get destroyed. No talking in line, no hats indoors, no swinging on chairs, no gum, no sighing, no attitude. You could catch detention for blinking the wrong way. A kid once got yelled at for chewing aggressively. Another was sent to the hall for raising his hand sarcastically. The punishments, brutal. Write lines, copy definitions, clean erasers until your fingers were white with chalk dust. One teacher made us memorize a poem about self-control. I still know the first 3 lines. Trauma works like that, but we didn't protest. We memorized which teachers snapped the fastest. And if you thought the rules were strict, the people enforcing them were a whole different story. There were 2 kinds of teachers, the ones who gave up quietly and the ones who weaponized dry erase markers. Mr. Donnelly taught history like it was warfare. He slammed maps, shouted about the French Revolution, and called us soft if we forgot a date. Miss Rader, English, treated literature like punishment. She spoke in monotone, assigned book reports that were graded like dissertations, and erased the board like she had unresolved rage. And Coach Bennett? He blew his whistle in your face during dodgeball and called it motivation. If you needed help, you didn't ask. Asking was weakness. Weakness meant you were a target. One time I coughed in class and got moved to the hallway, not because I was sick, but because it was distracting. We didn't call it anxiety or burnout. We called it getting through the day, and that was just the vibe, until math showed up to ruin everything. Math wasn't something you learned, it was something you endured. Timed drills, pop quizzes, multiplication speed rounds that turned every classroom into a game, a show run by dictators. A red pen that carved your self-worth into the page. Today's kids, they get extra time, calculator passes, even color-coded emotion charts. We got a worksheet that smelled like toner and despair, and still, we got through it. Not because the system worked, but because fear is one hell of a motivator. If you survived the morning, you earned lunch. Earned being the strong word. Lunch was more like a dare. You'd stand in line with a plastic tray, praying the pizza didn't have that weird wet triangle in the middle. The options? Mystery meat, soggy green beans, or a roll so dry it could double as chalk. Milk came in warm cartons that smelled like punishment. You had 5 minutes to eat, 10 if no one barfed. Sometimes kids would trade food like prisoners, half a sandwich for a Twix. Once a kid traded his entire lunch for a pog slammer. That led to a fist fight by the radiator. No one broke it up. A lunch lady just shouted, "Handle it outside." We did, because lunch wasn't a break. It was recess that came after it. And that's where things got serious. Recess was not a mental health break. It was survival of the loudest. There were no structured games, no teachers guiding play, just a cracked blacktop, one deflated basketball, and 200 kids running like inmates at yard time. Someone always got hurt. Someone always cried. Someone always tried to climb the fence. There were kids playing soccer with a half-filled Coke can, others using jump ropes to lasso each other off the monkey bars. You learned who was dangerous, who had anger issues, who spit when they talked. I once watched a kid get clotheslined mid-tag. He got up with a bloody nose and said, "I'm fine." He wasn't. But we all said that back. Recess wasn't fun. It was where alliances were built, enemies were made, and someone definitely peed behind the dumpster. And when you were done, you still had to use the bathroom. God help you. The bathroom at school was its own level of trauma. It smelled like bleach and despair. Everything was wet. No one knew why. You never sat on the seat, you hovered. There was no toilet paper, just that brown, waxy roll that tore like dried leaves. Someone was always vandalizing something, carving names into stalls, drawing boobs on the mirror, writing "Mr. Feldman sucks eggs" in Sharpie. There was one stall that no one ever used. No one remembered why. We just didn't. The sink faucets barely worked, the hand dryers sounded like jet engines, and if you made eye contact with another kid in there, you both looked away like you'd witnessed a crime. It wasn't a restroom. It was a crime scene with plumbing. And the weirdest part still wasn't the most dangerous part of the day. That title belonged to the other kids. We didn't call it bullying. We called it growing up. If someone tripped you, stole your lunch, shoved you into a locker, that was just Tuesday. You got nicknames, stupid ones that stuck for years. I was Sweaty Freddy. My name isn't even Fred. If you told a teacher, they'd say, "Ignore it." If you cried, you just made it worse. There were no anti-bullying campaigns, no intervention specialists. You either learned to disappear, got funny, or hit back. That was it. The Gen X trifecta: invisibility, humor, or fists. One kid learned to moonwalk just to distract people from his stutter. Another became the yo mama joke king and lived off reputation alone. Me, I got good at reading a room and avoiding eye contact, because if you didn't play the game, you became the game. Fridays were supposed to feel different. They didn't. Every Friday started with the same thing: assembly. That meant 300 kids packed into a gym that smelled like socks and a floor wax, sitting on cold benches while the principal shouted into a broken microphone. There was always a long lecture about fire drills, behavior, respect, and not throwing your lunch. Someone would faint, someone would fart, someone would laugh so hard they got detention. We'd clap at the wrong times just to mess with the teachers. Someone once started a slow clap that got 3 kids suspended. The projector never worked, the film strip always jammed, and the health video from 1974 gave half the class nightmares. We didn't learn much during assemblies, but we did learn this: authority loves the sound of its own voice. And we just wanted out. Even if that meant boarding a moving bus with no seatbelts and 36 screaming kids, field trips were chaos on wheels. You'd climb into a rented bus that rattled like it hadn't passed inspection since Nixon. No seatbelts, no assigned seats. Just a bag of chips, a leaky juice box, and a kid named Dylan licking the window. The teacher would yell, "Everyone be quiet," which only made us louder. Once we got to the museum or factory or random patch of forest, we did what Gen X kids did best: wander, break rules, lose someone. There was always one kid who wandered off and found a dead bird or accidentally stole a rock. The highlight was lunch, usually eaten on the floor of a gift shop surrounded by postcards and magnets, while a chaperone chain-smoked outside. No selfies, no digital memories, just disposable cameras and vague recollections of yelling. But even then, even in the chaos, it still kind of ruled. By the time report cards came around, you didn't expect much. They came in a manila envelope with your name scrawled in ballpoint. Inside, numbers, letters. Maybe one comment like "talks too much" or "needs improvement in focus." That was it. No parent-teacher conferences, no feedback sessions, no growth plans. You handed it to your mom and hoped she didn't flip it over and find the part where you failed gym for non-cooperation. She didn't ask if you were okay. She asked if you were grounded, and somehow that felt normal. There was no reflection, no conversation, just sign it, file it, move on. And if you got a good grade, cool. That meant you were left alone, which, for a Gen X kid, was the highest form of praise. We weren't raised to seek validation. We were raised to stay out of the way. Looking back now, it's easy to say it was harsh, cold, unforgiving, and yeah, it was. But it was also magic, not because it was perfect, far from it, but because it was ours. The desks were awful, the teachers were unpredictable, the walls were covered in peeling paint and outdated maps, but we had scratch and sniff stickers, trapper keepers, and fruit-scented gel pens. We passed notes folded like origami bombs, wrote secret messages in invisible ink, had shoelaces that glowed in the dark and backpacks with Ninja Turtles on them. We had drama, we had trauma, but we also had wonder. Wonder that no one curated, no algorithm delivered it. We found it ourselves. We survived Gen X school, not in spite of it, because of it. And if you ask me, I wouldn't trade it for anything with a touchscreen and a fidget spinner.